Okay. So we'll call this meeting to order for the most normal meeting that we've had in 2 years without plastic plexiglass separating us. We can actually hear each other for a change. I'm pretty excited for that. Changes to the agenda, any? Councilor Gramlich.
Add a closed session under section 25, economic interest of the public body.
Any other changes to the agenda? If Councilor Adams.
Making a motion to adopt the agenda as amended.
Any discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? That is carried. We got minutes of our previous meeting held on February 1st in our package on page 3. Any issues with those minutes? Sorry, Councilor Hughes.
Motion to accept the meeting minutes of the regular meeting of council, February 1st, 2022.
Any discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? That is carried. Question period. We have this on here that for just a reminder to all of us internally and those watching at home. CAO update, we're only doing once a month during committee of the whole, but we do have a spot for question period. So if there's any questions from council or if there's anything pertinent that the CAO wants to share, they're more than welcome to do. Gary's first day back after being on holiday, so he's shaking his head saying, please don't look at me, please don't ask me anything. We'll try to keep it light. But any questions from council? Start with Councilor Hughes.
Hi, Gary. I do know you are just coming back from being gone, but I do have a quick follow-up. I wanted to ask about the Business Advisory Council that Insight is working on. I've had a constituent reach out with interest about sitting on that council, and they're just kind of wondering, where, when, who to reach out to. So I just wanted to put that on your radar and see if I could get some information to pass along.
So at this time, I don't have that information because I've been away. I know Insight has started doing some work on it, but it's buried in about 500 emails in my inbox. So certainly by later this week, I should be able to sort through that and
Perfect.
can provide that information to council.
Great. Thank you so much.
Any other questions, comments from council? I'm going to throw one out so it's on everybody's radar for next meeting, actually, as an agenda item. One of the things that we had talked about previously, it's come up through budget and some of our discussions that we've been having is around snow removal. And so there's, this year has been frustrating to say the least. Between shortages on manpower, we've been down 2 operators for a while. Additional to that, Mother Nature keeps kicking our butt. One day she wants to snow and the next day everything is melting. So when you get a foot of snow one day and 2 days later, then it's above zero and melting for a numerous amount of days. Just the amount of water that has to flow. I want to start by saying, actually, I think our town staff are doing an amazing job. I think that, the stuff that the public doesn't see, the stuff that goes on behind the scenes. We had our operators out there. I was talking to Calvin this morning. In the last round, 8 days straight, 12 hours a day, those guys were working their steam and culverts trying to keep water flowing and keep it out of people's homes. We had been announcing there last week or the week before about this water break on 6th Ave. We were shutting stuff down. The reality is we actually don't think that the water line actually even broke. There was just that much water in the ditch underneath in a frozen pile that we think it released and was running for so long that we thought there was a main water line break in there, and it wasn't. And it just shows the volume of precipitation that's been going on and how much obstacles that the crews are up against. So I know that we have talked about snow removal in the past. We talk about it a bit at budget, but there's always room to see how do we tweak that system and how we can make it better. And there's been a lot of comments about other communities. And I'm curious to look in the box and see what some other communities are doing. This will be obviously stuff to be done outside of the season. I don't, it's getting late in the season to be doing that. But I do have a quick discussion about that verbally for next meeting there, to toss around some ideas and maybe make some motions to say, let's spend some time looking around and see if we can improve that and make those guys' lives easier, because that team does work very, very hard. But some days it feels like they're up against a mountain. And if there's some tools or some strategies that we can put in place to make things easier and do a better job for our residents, I think that's a worthwhile discussion. Any other questions, comments? As I see none, we will jump into reports and new business. So the first is a report on page 8 for approving list of panelists for the Capital Region Assessment Review Board. And Roland, I think, is going to take us through that.
Yeah, so good evening, your worship and members of council. The purpose of tonight's reports, I have 2 items on here. The first is the renewal of the Capital Region Assessment Services Commission Services contract provided to the town of Slave Lake. And then the following is to approve the approved list of board members that the service has provided me to provide upcoming services for the year. So to start off, I've put a little background on why council must pass a bylaw establishing 1 or more assessment review boards. In 2018, council passed bylaw number 05/2018, establishing assessment review board services and appointed CRASC, the Capital Region Assessment Services Commission, to oversee the assessment review board. The prior agreement was for a 4-year term ending in 2022. And a renewal agreement has been received and reviewed by administration for an additional 2-year term, 2022 to 2024. The 2 matters that this board hears is LARB and CARB. So LARB is the Local Assessment Review Board and CARB is the Composite Assessment Review Board. A LARB board hears matters for residential properties with 3 or fewer dwelling units, farmland, or a tax notice other than a property tax notice. The CARB hears matters on residential properties of 4 or more dwelling units and non-residential properties with the exception of linear assessments, which are heard by the Municipal Government Board. On an annual basis, council has approved the appointment of panelists listed to the Assessment Review Board. And members of the Assessment Review Board may from time to time be required to hear assessment-related complaints as permitted by the MGA. The town currently contracts CRASC to oversee that there are trained and available members for each of the boards. Schedule A includes a list of individuals who have successfully completed the provincially legislated training courses and are qualified to sit on an assessment review board. Each is available to the CRASC participating municipalities to form boards for any LARB or CARB hearings which may arise. This service is required to be in place in the municipality. The town could oversee its own board or use the services provided by CRASC. In the past 4 years, 2 matters have been sent to the board. However, in each of these cases, they were withdrawn before the board conducted a review. With that, I'm open to any questions.
Questions, comments from council? Councillor Adams.
Just simply because I don't know this at all. Is there multiple services that put this together in the province? Is it just one that's put together?
Haven't really dug into the other services available. So CRASC is the only one that I know of, but I would assume that multiple, that is a common service in Alberta. However, depending on the size of the municipality and the resources available, some have their own boards that they set up or other services you could reach out to.
And we've only used this twice in the last.
Yeah, it's generally, this is like the end of the line. So what we'd like to do in the process, if you do have an assessment complaint, first steps are always phone the town, talk to the tax clerk. We'll also get in touch with our assessor KCL to see if there's something that we could do up front, or if maybe there is the square footage of the home was off by 100 square feet, or their records haven't been updated because they weren't able to do a review or whatever else. Take that avenue first. If you still disagree with that, there's further steps that we can walk you through, and eventually they would end up before the CARB hearing, CARB or LARB hearing.
Okay, other questions, comments, concerns? Councillor Ferguson.
I'd like to make a motion. Be resolved that council directs administration renew the agreement between the town of Slave Lake and Capital Region Assessment Services Commission to provide local assessment review board and composite assessment review board services for the town of Slave Lake.
Any discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? That is carried. Councillor Brandel.
Be it resolved that council agrees to approve the Capital Region Assessment Services Commission list of panelists for 2022.
Any discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? That is carried. Councillor Adams.
Motion resolved that council agrees to appoint Raymond Ralph as the chair for the Local Assessment Review Board and the Composite Assessment Review Board.
Any discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? That's carried. Councillor Gramlich.
Be it resolved that council agrees to appoint Gerald Amorin as the clerk for the Local Assessment Review Board and the Composite Assessment Review Board.
Any discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? That is carried. Jump into extremely interesting topic. Sawridge Creek water line replacement.
Good evening, Your Worship and members of council. The purpose of this report is to provide cost increase update to council for the Sawridge Creek Waterline project. Just to provide some background, on June 15, 2021, administration provided council with various options to put the affected north transmission main in service. At the time, at that council meeting, a budget of $384,970 was approved for replacing the water main with brand new alignment. The budget estimate at the time was based on preliminary assessment without any geotechnical background, and along with some contingency built in. Then during our detailed design work, we conducted a geotechnical investigation which verified a sand seam along the south bank close to the pedestrian bridge. Just to give you some explanation, sand seam is a saturated sand layer of various thickness, and that sand can slough in if you are drilling through it. It can doesn't have that cohesion between particles, so it can slough in and create more problems. And the sand seam also increases the risk of fracking out that drilling fluid from the surface, and it might eventually spill into creek or the neighboring properties. To manage the risk, we changed the alignment from the west side of the bridge to the east side of the bridge. And we also included an additional installation of steel casing while they are drilling the bore path. So steel casing will hold the drill fluid within the casing rather than pushing it out. And because of this additional work, the estimate was revised to $493,000. Then we put the tender out on January 20 this year, and it closed on 10th February this year. Upon closing, we received 4 bids in the following bid amount, and the lowest is Pidernis. They are a company from Central Alberta with a bid of $997,676. Upon detailed evaluation, we found out that the lowest contractor's bid reflected some additional risk or contingency built in with respect to some unforeseen challenges because of the sand seam as specified in the geotechnical report. They also included increased labor cost due to labor shortages. They also had a contingency built in for certain material price changes while the project is progressing. They also had price increases due to fuel, equipment, and insurance costs. There were additional costs built in to manage abrupt schedule changes due to supply chain issues. And also there were some additional costs built in to haul the drilling fluid out to a facility in Mitsu. Just to remind, before we were not required to haul the drilling fluid out, we can leave it in the pit itself, but now the regulations have changed and we have to haul it out to a specialized location. The volatility in the construction material prices is unprecedented at this time. Because we really cannot put cost risk and lead times onto the contractors and suppliers. If we try to put those unrealistic risk onto the contractor, they will either decline to bid or they will put such contingency on the project, which will inflate the cost of the project to unacceptable levels. Administration is currently negotiating with the lowest bidder, and we are also further working with local contractors to bring the cost down by allotting some uncomplicated work scope to them. And we also recognize that this proposed infrastructure is very critical to in building back system redundancy for water distribution across the entire southeast quadrant. And also, I have not included this portion in my report, but I would like to say I also consulted our consultant, Associated Engineering, and even they are hearing industry-wide that the costs are really going up. And they also added that nowadays it's impossible to have a confidence in estimates because market conditions are abruptly changing. We also compared Associated since January 1st, they had 2 tender closed in different parts of Alberta. They were completely different project, but they did had some scope with respect to water line installation for PVC and HDPE. We did compare that specific bid item and we found out that the cost was higher than they anticipated. And also we read one of the economist report that was published in August 2021. They said that HDPE prices at the time were already up by 58.1% year over year compared to August 2020. And some estimates from the same economists also suggest that the production of plastic and resin product could rise by additional 9.2% in 2022. And yeah, if council wishes to revise the project cost, it can be captured in 2022 capital budget. And yeah, I'm open for any questions.
Okay, let's jump into questions and comments. Councillor Brandel, sorry.
So Kush, I'm just trying to wrap my brain. Is this the one that feeds Springwood or the one that feeds the one on Main Street and off to the southeast?
It feeds Springwood.
Okay. This is where we had the break.
Yes, yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
So originally when we heard this, the fix was you were going to do it in the right of way about halfway down there where the break actually happened?
No, that was one of the options we presented and the cost was really in line with replacing with a brand new pipe. So council chose to go with the brand new pipe.
Oh, okay. Okay, no, I was just trying to figure out
And
what happened not to that one.
This line is going to be installed not in the same right of way, but it will be, through that pedestrian bridge, we have another right of way concrete sidewalk coming into the Springwood cul-de-sac. That's where it will, basically the line will tie it in. Yeah. Yeah.
Councillor Ferguson.
Just so for the benefit of those who may be listening, can you just run through a little bit of the history on this project and why it's so integral to our operations?
Yes. So Southeast Quadrant was originally fed by 2 main lines. One was in the south crossing Highway 2 from our Hilltop Reservoir. And the other one was on the north crossing Sawridge Creek behind the hospital, tying into the Springwood. And those were the main feed line to distribute water in the Southeast Quadrant. And in 2021, one of the bank let loose and along the Sawridge Creek and the North Main was affected. And at the time until now, we are only relying on the South Main supplying water to the whole Southeast Quadrant. And we investigated into what are the options to repair in place or to replace it completely. And we found out to replacing it completely would be a better choice because the line was already 50 years or more in service. And it was close to the bank. So that could happen again, right? We will be into same problem. So council approved the motion to go with a brand new alignment. And that is why it's very important because if we don't install this North Main, then if something happens to the South Main, then the Southeast Quadrant of the town will have no water.
Big deal. Councillor Adams.
You had commented in there that they added additional contingencies, which is adding to the extra cost. How much or what percentage of contingency have they added in that affects the cost?
Usually because it's a contractor, they won't disclose their internal, markups and all that kind of stuff. But they said that it's for the labor cost, they did specify it's between 10 and 15% has gone up because they gave us an example that 3 of their foremen had left to take opportunity in oil and gas sector, which is booming right now. And just to retain more labor, they have to increase their cost.
Okay. Council Gramlich.
So the second lowest bidder, though, is a fixed price?
No, we did not approach second lowest bidder.
No, but that was a fixed price though, right?
Fixed price in the sense.
Like their numbers wouldn't have changed on their bid?
They're theoretically all fixed prices, aren't they?
Yes, they are all fixed prices.
Okay, so I have a question along that then. Can we change it to a project managed type build instead of that we take all the risk? Right? Like we switch it around and say, hey, we just want you to manage a project. We'll buy the pipe direct, we'll
Right.
whatever, right? We'll buy the mud, we'll dispose of the mud and so on and so forth. So that they take out a bunch of this risk and change our number on our costs. Is that a possibility? Are we exploring that?
So yeah, we did look from that scenario, and we are considering some of the risk transfer to the owner itself, which would be, this project was initially designed to go in two phases. Phase one was to install or to drill the line during the frozen condition of the ground, which would be right now. And phase two was to come back in after the frost is out and do the final tie-in to the Springwood portion of the line. So we went back to the contractor and we said that, hey, can we do it in one phase so that it will reduce the mobilization, right? That's where we can have some savings. And yeah, they agreed. So we are chopping up that contract so that, the local guy can install the pipe in the Springwood, which is not a longer section. It's just, I would say 30 meter. And then they can finish up the directional drilling in one mobilization. Second thing we talked about was purchase of pipe, but they said that usually this product is DR9, which is a thicker pipe because they have to pull it through under the Storage Creek, and it's a custom built pipe, right? It's not readily available to the supplier. So they said that the prices are already little higher because it's not readily available material. And if town tries to buy it and sell it to them, there will still be some administration costs that they will have to put it on the town. Because
Why do we have to sell it? Why would we buy it and sell it to them? Why can't we just buy it and tell them to use this pipe?
yeah, so we will do it. I mean, like we are thinking to do that. We tried to do that with our lift station C project in the past. And we also talked about this for this project, but they said that the magnitude of saving won't be that much. But we can definitely look into that, just get them to, put their numbers on the table and see what kind of magnitude we are looking at. But we are looking from the other standpoint, as I said, we are trying to chop up the contract so that we can assign local contractors and get it done locally as much as we can.
Okay. Other questions, comments? So the overview is we get this pipe that broke. We're trying to get it fixed. Costs keep jumping up.
Yeah.
We have supply issues.
Yeah.
So, but we need to get this done because we have no redundancy in our system.
Yes.
So we have one line break. The whole southeast doesn't have water and we don't have a
Yes.
plan to feed it back.
Yes.
So this pipe then that they're ordering, this 9 mil or whatever else,
Yeah.
that is a custom job, like how long they expect, how
So
long is it gonna take to get done?
Turnaround time is 4 weeks. That's what they said, 4 to 5 weeks. So if they get, I think they already went to a supplier. We already took the risk. We said that, no matter what, just can you go ahead and at least give them a PO so that they can get the order in? Because the prices, as last we spoke, I myself spoke to a pipe supplier and he said that there would be an 11% increase in March. So we didn't want it to take that additional price escalation risk. So they have already provided a PO. And it's on that condition that if council doesn't wishes to proceed with the project, town will still buy the pipe and we can store it at our location. We will reuse it in the future.
Sounds, but we should have ordered more and we could just sell it to somebody else later and maybe pay for this project. Okay. Well, I know that this one is frustrating for the public because it also feeds the splash park, but at the moment
Yes.
there, what the public doesn't realize is that it also feeds a quarter of the town, if not more. And so we need to get it done. So the plan at this point is this pipe is ordered, plan is to proceed,
Yes.
working through some cost savings with the
Local
lowest
contractor.
bidder contractor by hiring some local people, putting them
Yes.
to work. changing the scope a little bit and hopefully we can see some savings, but have no idea what those numbers are going to be until later on.
No,
Okay. And talking with Associated, they're seeing similar things in our other projects
Yes.
around the province.
yes.
Okay, that's unfortunate. Because our other big ones here for this year then that potentially are on the radar is our stuff with the C force main there on
Yes.
Sixth Ave.
Yes,
And theoretically later our one that goes underneath the creek to feed southeast the other way from the new lift station that we're trying to put in.
that would be potentially next year.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Those are the only ones that are on the radar for
And
plastic, right?
Third Street Southwest.
Right?
Yeah.
Because our plan is to redo road and we got to do underground.
Yeah, so we have to do water line for sure. Sewer line would be spot repairs, so majority would be water line purchase.
So that project, the engineering is almost complete or
No,
done?
it's in the way. Yeah,
It's,
yeah, it's getting done right now.
okay. So when do we expect to tender some of those projects to be able to understand what those costs will look like for this year?
I would say we haven't completed the detailed design, so we won't know until the detailed design is completed. I would say 6 more weeks.
Okay.
Yeah.
So likely towards the end of April.
April, yeah.
We'll have, towards the end of April, we'll have the quotes going out, like
Yes.
tenders going out.
Tender was early May, just before the frost, once we hit the beginning of summer. So I think our plan is to go mid-May. And in our region, usually frost is out between mid-May and the end of the May.
So
So
the tender is to go out mid-May or?
yeah, mid-May, yeah.
So
Tender
then-
is going to out mid-May, yes.
So then we give them what, 2 weeks, 3 weeks,
To usually 14 days.
14 days? Okay.
Yes.
So we're gonna know here the first part of June, what the world looks like.
Yes.
If we can get these projects done or not.
Yeah.
Okay. Which is unfortunate because of COVID, we've put a couple of them off
Yes.
in the last couple of years for similar reasons and seen escalations in the other one, because lift force main there, we didn't do last year because costs came in high as well.
Yes. We thought, we can push it back because our operations crew can manage the risk by deploying hydrovac, and pumping that sewer out, all the surcharge that coming into the lift station. So we thought, we can continue maintaining the risk and in anticipating that the prices will go down, but it's just, we cannot guarantee when the prices will go back to how it was before.
Okay,
And also I talked to Town of High Prairie this morning, and they didn't had any water line or sewer line project. The last project that they had out was in fall 2020. That's when they tendered. And since then, they haven't tendered any project out. But
Okay.
they did say that they have been doing patching program year over year, and they did notice the prices of asphalt is already on the rise.
okay. Nothing but bad news in that report, hey? Counselor Hughes.
Be resolved that council accepts this report as information.
Any further discussion? All the question, those in favor? That's carried.
Thank you.
Next, we get a staffing levels update. Roland.
All right, so the purpose of this report is just to advise council on the current status of ongoing recruitment efforts and current staffing levels. Attached to this report is the final reporting number for the 2021 year. The combined budgeted position totals for the year was 89 FTEs, which is full-time equivalents. This would include both full-time employees and part-time employees, adjusted for hours to match a full-time position. Q1 of 2021, the town had 62 FTEs. A number of staff were on temporary leave and or the position was vacant. Q2, due to staff recalls and new hires, that number increased to 73. Q3 remained largely unchanged from Q2. And in Q4, hiring picked back up again to the end of the year, to end the year off at 80 FTE positions. Also included in this report is the staff turnover rate for the year. As shown in the attachment, the trend over the year saw a significant decrease in the turnover rate as we approached the end of the year. And this was a positive move in the right direction. For the discussion here, COVID-19 introduced a number of challenges around staffing for all levels of governments and businesses alike, and the town was no different. With our HR department fully staffed towards the end of 2021, hiring efforts are ongoing. As of the date of this report, we've hired an additional 10 employees to fill vacant positions in Q1 of 2022. We currently have 7 vacant positions in which hiring is ongoing, and we've started recruiting for our summer staff positions as well. We've brought in temporary assistants to fill 2 positions to ensure our workflow continues in these areas during our ongoing recruitment process. The remaining positions left to fill are key positions for ongoing operations in either critical roles or at a supervisory level and above. Challenges in Q1 largely centered on staff absences due to illness. While we have many of our vacant positions filled, temporary absences throughout the departments have led to service level interruptions and operational challenges. We have reached out for outside assistance, hiring contractors where possible and available, reassigning workloads, hiring temporary staff, and ensuring where possible interdepartmental assistance was provided. And that's the update for our current situation for staffing. Open to any questions or?
Questions, comments? Councillor Ferguson.
So pre-COVID, how many vacancies did we have on average, or do you have that information available?
I don't have that
Okay.
available.
Other questions, Councillor Adams?
Again, a couple questions to follow up with that. For the community services being at 39 right now, how does that break down as far as, and this is my ignorance again, where it's located within our offices? Is that strictly talking MRC and pool, or is it additional here?
Community services, that number there would encompass the whole service. So it'd be, the portion that works out of the town office, the portion that works at the MRC, and the portion that works at the pool, as well as the peace officers.
Okay. And then is it possible to know what the weighted impact is on salary for each one? I know I haven't seen that breakdown, and maybe you guys know it from been here for a while, but where we are as far as manpower costs for each of those according to how you broke them down.
We could take, I don't have that information on me, but we could take a
No,
look.
I get that.
Like money spent thus far?
This far, just what, not just the budget number, but yeah, I guess would be this far actual for the year that's being reported.
Okay, but
By
the
department.
actual that's being reported, the actual being reported is numbers, so you're just looking for a dollar figure of what that is. right?
Yeah, and then I can see, yeah, you can tell 39 is taking this percentage of the overall pie compared to 18 in operations, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay.
That's what I'm after, if possible. Okay, thank you.
Okay, other questions, comments? Yeah, it'd be silly of me not to say something here in this moment, there's a lot of people that don't understand what goes on behind the scenes, and largely because we don't always tell them, they don't always see it, and there's a lot of other things going on in the world here right now. But I will say that our organization has been having to ebb and flow as COVID restrictions come on and buildings are open and buildings are closed. And when buildings are closed, there's still work that has to be done. We've been hit with a number of sick people just as much as other organizations have. And it's been a very frustrating time. And I just want to say to our staff, this is obviously very analytical pieces that show you that we have been running short for a while. And some of these positions, although it looks just like one position, they are key positions that have a huge impact on the ability of our organization to move forward. And I just want to say thanks to our staff that they probably don't hear it enough. Because time and time again, behind the scenes, our staff rises to the occasion, helps out where they need to, do whatever has to be done, work in different positions, roll up their sleeves to get things done. And I just want to say thanks, and I hope they get that message, and please pass that on, because we are lucky to have them. With that, I'd entertain a motion. Councillor Ferguson.
I'll make a motion that we accept the report as information.
Any discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? It is carried. Moving right along here. Correspondence. So we've got a response to a letter that we sent on page 24 of our package from the Associate Minister of Natural Gas. We recently have been lobbying behind the scenes and did send some information off to the Alberta Utilities Commission about some frustration with some change in the tariff design and how they want to change that and what effects it would have on communities and industry and the socioeconomic impacts. I know that there was some success that a number of municipalities did reach out and express their frustration. And I know that the Alberta Forest Products Association is helping spearhead some data to be shared with AUC as we move forward, the Utilities Commission, on some of the socioeconomic impacts in some of those communities. So we'll wait to see what those look like. That being said, though, Councillor Hughes.
Yeah, I've actually had a request from our local Slave Lake Public Library as well as the Peace Library Board system for the town of Slave Lake to also send a letter just advocating on behalf of both libraries with regards to the same issue. So I have been sent a drafted copy of that. So just wondering if I would be able to forward that to the town and if council would be okay with sending a supportive letter for both libraries.
I'm confused. So
I mean,
the libraries,
yeah, the libraries are requesting us to send our own letter from the town of Slave Lake, just advocating on their behalf about
behalf of
different
libraries or
Yep,
on behalf
of
of
our
this,
library and the Peace Regional Library Board.
about this Alberta Utilities Commission?
Yeah,
please?
yeah, about
Because
like,
it's going to affect them.
yes, yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
Okay,
Yeah, it's affecting them a lot, actually.
okay, good to know.
Yeah, so I'd like to make a motion that council direct administration to provide a letter of support for the Peace Library Board system as well as the Slave Lake Regional Library.
Okay, any discussion on that motion? Call the question. Those in favor? That's carried. Councillor Adams.
In here, I understand that we've registered to participate in the proceedings. But they're also questioning that we have not sent our concerns to the AUC. Have we actually sent our concerns to the AUC?
We did express in our letter that we did send off that our concern was around the economic impact it
To
would
the
have
minister
to
though, wasn't it?
the
Or was it
community.
to the AUC?
We sent it to the AUC.
Okay.
And so the AUC though has that information. The AUC has sent a letter back. So this is not the AUC, this is the minister's office.
And then have we also tried to involve or get the opinion of oil and gas? Rather than just forestry, or what other high energy users there may be in our area? We have quite a few.
I'm trying to think back here now. I want to say that we did reach out to one of our local ones for some feedback and said that it would be impacting them as well. I think that one of the most major ones, forestry is highly impacted, especially pulp mills, because literally almost 50% of their costs come from electricity. And so that had the most significant impact, but any major user of electricity is going to be affected. So theoretically, potentially affect us and all of our own buildings here with the amount of power we use just to keep our own operations going. But we can follow up there and see if there's been any comments from oil and gas. I know that the Forest Products Association is working closely with some of the oil producers from an association standpoint.
I was thinking more from a local standpoint from our area and how that's going to impact us locally and the jobs it's going to hit. I mean, if we look at the increases that forestry is saying they're going to be facing, if we add that into some of the oil and gas here in town, I know it suddenly does not become viable. It's insane. And that's a huge impact, and that trickle down is crazy.
Yeah, so the AUC was basically supposed to make a decision on this and release some information. And so then because they hadn't much as this pushback, I know that those associations are doing some of the socioeconomic impact studies that would come. And I know that our region is a target of interest for that. but I will follow up. There was a letter sent, it was in one of our packages here previously from NFPA, or an email that was gone, and I shared with the rest of council, but I'll follow up with that too. Any other questions, comments? Let's jump into the next one. Yeah, we voted already. Yes, we did, right? We voted. Next is Minister of Seniors Housing response. So we had a meeting with them in November when we went for AUMA last year in 2021 to talk about some of our frustrations and concerns in regards to monitoring projects and making sure things are looked after. Housing is definitely a pinch that the community feels. I was on a call today there where we've got a small committee that's kind of working towards like a welcoming type committee or a newcomers to our region committee and talking about different ideas and how they fit in and what they do. And, you know, housing was talked about there as well. I've heard from a number of industry people that there's just this availability. We're sitting next to two realtors who at the beginning of this meeting, we're talking about how busy things are and there's just not enough inventory and things that are out there. So, you know, those messages are going back to housing. This one was in more specific to the project that's supposed to go on Main Street, and just making sure that that is monitored well, because at this point, Slave Lake needs all the housing that it can get. This letter is largely for information purposes only, but just wanted to throw that out there. Councilor Adams.
I was just wondering what, some of the concerns we had brought up was ensuring that what was happening, how it was moving along, and really how that they were using, accessing our resources for the backlog. What do we have in place now to follow up with the government to ensure that that this is happening and it's progressing the way it is? Is it just we happen to remember, or do we actually have something, a process?
So 100%, we don't have a process. So largely, this is a provincial project. And it is managed by the province. It is funded by the province, in between them and a local contractor that's agreed to take on some of that work. And so
Which they were saying they were going to commit to us to keep us in the loop, have that communication piece open.
Yeah, and they had committed to doing that through the Housing Authority.
Yeah.
And so it would be up to the Housing Authority there to continue to make sure that they feel that they're included and they're in the loop. We have representatives from town council as well as from the MD sitting on there. So what I would encourage those representatives to make sure that they continue to keep an eye on that project, as well as basically there's an operational agreement that comes out of it. And the idea is that they will work hand in hand with housing to share information, and it'll be up to that board to ensure that that gets done. So
Thanks.
loosely yes and no. Councillor Brownell.
Just a quick comment to your last sentence there, that that they will be monitoring that. Some of it, the information is FOIPable, so some of them, the information sharing won't be back and forth at all. They won't be sharing wait lists and things like that, so.
Okay. Motion to accept that letter's information. Thank you, Councillor Ferguson. Any discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? That is carried. Mayor's Corner. There's actually lots going on, and so start. First off, most of council was able to attend an event, a show of support, a gathering that they had in front of the town office here tonight at 6:30. And so thanks to Marianne and Sherry and Amy and Nicole and the rest of the volunteers for putting that on. Largely built around the shocking news that the world woke up to only a few handful of days ago, that the Russia had invaded Ukraine. And I only say what it was like for me, that, you know, I remember the day that 9/11 happened, and I was sitting at Boston Pizza or counting cash in the morning, doing my morning reporting, and setting up for the store. And you just, I think you're watching this on the news and you feel like the whole world just changed. You don't know exactly what it means, but you know that the whole world is going to be different tomorrow. And watching a lot of the stuff that's going on in Ukraine, it's crazy to think that that's how we feel. It's what it feels like right now. You know, a couple of days later, I saw, you know, for those that aren't aware, a number of the Ice Dogs players come from European countries. And so one of their players was here from Ukraine last year and was one of the leading scorers in there. And I think it would be, you know, one of the leadership positions in the team, young man, and he's now in Ukraine. He's not able to leave because they are keeping all their men for fighting positions, and they are literally going to war. And it's hard to think that he was literally like shoveling sidewalks for seniors, helping out the town of Slave Lake last year. And that's what he's up against right now in his life. So I will say thoughts and prayers to all of those over there. It is nice to see the entire world coming together and stepping up and saying that this is not acceptable. Understanding that everybody has a different opinion on what level that all these countries should be doing, what Canada should be doing. But I'm glad that we're doing something. And it looks like we're going to do more. So we'll see where that ends up. I'll be interested to see the State of the Union address too tonight. The US president was doing. So I'll be curious to see what came out of that or what kind of message is coming from there, because it's not acceptable. It's crazy. It's crazy, to be honest. More devastating news, I will say, it was very sad to hear a couple of days ago that Dennis Barton passed away. And so Barton Park over in the Southwest, our Quadrant Park, is named after him and his family. Dennis was an MLA even for this region back in the day, very much a pioneer of Slave Lake's history and had an integral part in its design. He spent a lot of time lobbying for things and improvements that happen. And I can tell you, even as I've been here on mayor, it was a regular occurrence to get a call from Dennis from the whispers in the wind that I needed to go chase because he was hearing stuff and we needed to get on it and make sure things happened. And so my thoughts and prayers go out to the Barton family. I understand that he'll have a service in the spring, and yeah, I spent a lot of time with Wendy on the Rotary Club, and it was very sad to hear. And I know that I shouldn't emphasize that any more than the number of losses that have happened in Slave Lake over the last couple of years for a variety of reasons. But Dennis was a big part of their history and an elected official that helped try to guide its future. With that, I will also say that today is a remarkable day. You know, it's one of the first times that council is able to sit here without these plexiglass. You know, we've seen people walking around the community without masks. You're going into stores, and it looks like people are having like reunions there. I even found myself questioning some people that I was looking at to try and figure out who they were. And they work for me, so that's even more awful because we just spent so much time wearing masks. It's crazy. And so I know that there's still lots to figure out in the world, and I know that everything is not fixed, and I know that everything's not gone, and that risk still remains. But I think for the mental health of people, I think it is amazing to see things returning to as normal as that we can find, and I hope it's a course that we can stay on. I did talk today, we had a meeting with this Newcomers Initiative. Excited to see some community members that are stepping up in there. I had some letters come that I'll share with council for next week, that there's some more information coming. Business community is really starting to feel the pinch when it comes to labor. The provincial government is talking about some programs that they've released out to encourage communities to get involved more with the labor force as a group that is a council that's very passionate about economic development and attracting people, a population. You know, I think that there's an opportunity there for us. So I have some information to share next week. RCMP, there's a meeting this Friday at the Legion. They're doing a public engagement. It's not RCMP, it's the National Police Federation, which is their union association that represents a number of those members. They're there to talk and give some information and get feedback about the idea of a provincial police force. And obviously they're not in favor of that. Our council has sent letters previously saying that we are not in favor of that, but I will be attending that meeting. Along with that, we've got notice this week. And so I've been talking a lot in the past about RCMP and the cost of policing. One of the things that was very frustrating for municipalities is that, and frustrating for the RCMP themselves, is that all the wages were frozen as they went through some contract negotiations for a number of years. Federal government one day jumps out and says, hey, we finished our debate there and we finalized an agreement. And I know we didn't include you at the table. We didn't tell you anything. But hey, guess what? Here, this is what's coming. And so a 3% impact to our budget basically for 2022 right off the hop, for the adjustment in wages just for the year of 2022. And then behind the scenes that we have been told that an estimate is coming on what impact it will have with your community for retroactive pay for the 5 years previous to that. Municipalities across Alberta are fuming at the prospect of that. The Alberta municipalities, which used to be the Alberta Urban Municipalities Association, AUMA, which is this group that represents all of these municipalities, has basically been fighting with the federal government, lobbying to them that we have support from the provincial government. And the message around the table is don't pay your bill because I don't even know where the money is going to come from and we need to go fight on this one. So step one of this whole process is that they would give us an estimate based on what they would think it is going to impact us potentially, knowing that once they dig into the numbers, overtime, stat pay, all these things have a bit of influx in the calculations. But we did get the letter yesterday that gives us a rough estimate. I still have time to go through it, but first glance is we're on the hook for over $1 million. And so that's substantial money that isn't budgeted for, that we have no plan for, that we don't have reserve marked for, that I don't know where that money is going to come from. So when you pack that into the fact that we're trying to get our own capital projects done here. We're trying to get water lines to make sure that we have running water to people. And we're seeing escalation in costs of over 50 to 60%, and things just creeping up everywhere. It's crazy. So let's transport to the next topic. The provincial government just came out with a budget. And so the victory is that we're going to a balanced budget, and first one in a long time. Hoorah, hoorah, hoorah. And that sounds great, but one of the things I will say is that municipalities exist because the provincial government allows us to exist, and they guide us how we exist, and they mandate what we do and what we don't do. And so there has always been a recognition for decades in the fact that municipalities survive because of the partnerships and relationships and funding that they receive from the provincial government. And so we were notified that we were going to take a hit because of COVID, because of the rising costs and things that were going on, and that we were going to suffer for a year or two. Saw hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars in decrease of our MSI funding that goes towards a number of these big capital projects. And that isn't changing for this provincial budget. In fact, there's a provincial framework coming in 2024 that will see a new framework for how they fund municipalities. And early indications from this budget indicate that we're going to see an ongoing reduction of close to 40%. And so I think it's fantastic that we're balancing a budget. I think that's important. We, theoretically, municipalities are subject to having to do that every year. And so we don't get to declare victory every 5 years when we do it. But I will say the fact that you're seeing these massive escalations in costs. We're seeing massive escalations in inflation and the cost of running municipalities, but massive decreases on what they do to fund it. Oh, and by the way, here's these other bills for things that we negotiated on your behalf. Surprise. It's becoming very difficult to figure out where your priorities are and what is the most important, but it's very obvious that the level of adversity and the challenges that we're up against are high. So I don't want to create a whole bunch of doom and gloom, and that's not my intention with this, but I just want people to understand there's a lot of balls bouncing around and none of them look that great. Lastly, I was supposed to do an ANSA meeting tomorrow for the Alberta North Central Alliance. Our next kind of plan with that group was around some strategic planning and how the group would work together. Big Lakes County did spearhead. I always do that. Is it Big Lakes County or County of Big Lakes? Jordan gives me a hard time about that. It's Big Lakes County, right? Big Lakes County, okay. And so they spearheaded a application there to apply for some grant funding for ANSA to do that. We're hoping to hear back, but we haven't yet. And so to make sure that that discussion is worthwhile and understand what we're doing there, it's been postponed. We're hoping to hear something in the next week or two. We'll go from there. So Lastly, did release some information on budget preliminary. Council's been working on budget extensively in December and January and into February. I guess we're already in March. It's crazy. We are close to finishing it, but trying to figure out with all these new things that just pop out of the woodwork, what does success look like and where do we end up? So hoping to get that finalized here in the weeks ahead. Sorry for a lengthy one, but at this point, we'll jump into our closed session. Motion to go into closed session. Thank you, Councillor Adams. Any discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? That is carried.
Oh, yes.
Sure.